It's Chelsea,
It's Nina,
and
and
you're
you're
in
in
the
the
Critics
Critics
Kingdom.
Kingdom. Welcome to another week at the Critics Kingdom.
Yes, yes. And this week, a classic, based on one of the most popular Disney Channel shows, the Even Stevens movie. Um, you all, I'm sure, have watched, loved, Even Stevens, the show when you were a kid. You probably really remember this movie because I remember it being a fairly popular and big thing. And it was also the finale of the whole series. So, um, yeah, this is definitely one that it was fun to come back to, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. It came out in 2003, and that was sort of, I know for me, that was like peak, yeah, I would say like peak Disney Channel time.
Yeah,
Like,
because
this
we were
was
like
the
10,
era, yeah,
right?
and it was the era of like, in terms of Disney Channel shows, like, we had Lizzie McGuire, we had Even Stevens, we had Proud Family, we had That's So
Mm-hmm.
Raven. Like, was the heyday, I would argue, of the best that Disney Channel had to offer. And this show also, like, very much launched the career of a now problematic figure, but the one and only Shia LaBeouf.
Right, right.
And all of everything that ensues from there. So yeah, like, it was definitely fun to just be in that space again. It was very nostalgic, very much just reminiscent of childhood, and that was a pleasant thing to experience while watching it for sure.
Yeah, I 100% would agree. I definitely remember really enjoying the movie and then also the show, which I did not realize came out in 2000 originally.
Yeah,
Um,
I
because I
thought
was
it was
like, I just feel
older.
like we were so young.
Yeah, I thought it was older when it came out, but I guess not. Like,
Yeah. No, that was crazy looking at it. I was like, oh wow, it was only on for 3 years from 2000 to 2003. And I'm like, in 2000, I was like, 7. Like,
yeah,
what?
I think we had
Uh,
just gotten cable in my house because that
mm,
was my, like, when I was really little, we didn't have cable, and I would like go
hmm.
over to my cousin's house and watch like Tom and Jerry and Gullabella Island, and I was like, by the time I hit 7, like, in case it was like, yes, meant to be an entertainment, I like told my mom, I was like, all I want for my birthday is cable. That's it. Like, like, I don't need a party. I don't need, just please, please, for the love of God, get me cable.
I'm trying to imagine
um,
my 7-year-old child be like, please get me that HBO package. Thank you so much.
that was me. That's essentially. I was like, that's all I need from you.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I think so. I didn't. I guess I didn't realize it because, like, it was one of the. It was probably one of the first shows that I like watched on Disney Channel.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
so it's
Hmm.
probably in my head as just like Disney Channel is equivalent with things like Even Stevens and Lizzie McGuire, because those were the shows that were coming out
Hmm.
when I found Disney Channel.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah. So it's a
No,
little personal
I
story.
I agree with you. And I think with that, would you want to get into Zilly Cap?
I would love to, Chelsea. So, the Even Stevens movie. Now, the first scene of the film is actually like kind of weird. It looks like this dude who lives in his basement, like, like a weird hacker dude, sort of just like searching various pictures of families. It's all very nefarious now. Like, when you look back on it, you're like, this is not
It looks so creepy.
this is not okay. But he's like creepily selecting families, and we see him crossing families off the list and then like circle or check something like that. The Stevens family. So, like, dun dun dun, things are gonna happen. And then we go to, we're with the Stevens, and it is Ren's graduation day from junior high school. It's the end of the school year, and in perfectly fitting fashion, Ren is the valedictorian, and Lewis is making life difficult. Like, he
As
has
per
a
usual.
as per usual, he has a plan to take like the plan, I guess, is to like have this floating beach ball, like, circling all the graduates, and it's supposed to release confetti. But because he does all of his pranks with like an 8-year-old, like because that makes sense. The 8-year-old misheard him and thought he said spaghetti, not confetti. And so the balloon is filled with spaghetti. It explodes all over everybody, and like the coach that's always trying to get Lewis, and like everybody's just upset with him. And so obviously like Ren and Lewis are arguing, and their mom Eileen is essentially like, okay, stop it, like this summer we are not going to do this, like you're not going to fight, we're going to like get along, because Donnie's going off to college in the fall, Ren's starting high school, and like this is a very important time for our family, and we should, and things are going to change very soon, so we just have to like be a family together, and Lewis, stop antagonizing your sister, right?
Right.
That's the idea. So now everybody has summer plans, and like Lewis's plan, he's invented this like extreme lazy boy that where he never has to move out of it in order to just like have everything he needs, like food and drink and mosquito nets. And he plans to literally sit in that chair all summer. He's very excited about this. Ren, in theory, is like planning to, chill with her boyfriend Gil, but he breaks up with her because he's going to a camp in Maine, and he wants to, be a free agent for all of the, northeastern tail that he might acquire. Um, and and I don't. Donnie doesn't really have plans for the summer. It seems. I think he's just like, I'm gonna work out because that's what he does all the time. Like it's really simple. But so we see this guy Miles McDermott, and he shows up at their house, and he's like, "Congratulations, you've won a free trip, all expense paid, for a week to this island Mandolino that no one's ever heard of." And they're all like, "What? Why? Like, why are we? Why would we win this trip?" And he's essentially says that they're trying to bring tourists to the island, and because Eileen is a senator, like if she comes and she like likes it, and they can review it and they can quote them in the brochure and all of that, like it'll just bring the tourism, and they're just trying to build it up, so they're offering sort of free packages. And Ren sees this as a great opportunity, like get away for a week from her woes and sadness. Lewis doesn't want to go because he just wants to sit in his chair, but Eileen is like, this is going to be great for the family and we should do it. And Beans is coming along because his parents abandoned him and went off to like Iceland or something.
Helsinki.
Helsinki, right. They're in
Finland.
Helsinki. They're in Finland. And they left him for 2 to 3 weeks with their neighbors and didn't tell nobody. So
Truly wild.
It was crazy. So Beans has to come along with them. So they all go to this island, and at first, like, it's paradise, and they're all very excited. Then Lewis, in true fashion, though he is goaded a little bit, like we see Miles tell him that because they are offered these like slugs to eat, and they're supposed to be island delicacies, and it's offensive if they don't eat them. And Lewis is like, everyone's disgusted by it except for Beans because he's disgusting enough himself. And like Miles tells Lewis like, oh, there's snacks hidden in the palace where they're staying, right? It's like the sacred palace of the native people of the island. And he goes to like get the snacks. He gets the snacks, and then he stumbles upon like a throne room. And we have established that Lewis loves chairs and sitting around in chairs and eating. That's his ideal summer. So he's like, yes, a chair to sit in and eat. And he goes and sits in the throne, and then sees a like a lever and assumes it's a footrest, and he pulls the lever, and the palace self-destructs. Because palaces have self-destruct levers. Like that's a thing that one would build into a palace. And obviously the natives are very, very upset, and they essentially tell them like, go elsewhere, just get out of here while we figure this out. And so the family has to go. They don't have any shelter now, and the next plane doesn't come for a week. So they have to build their own shelter on the beach, and Miles gives them like 11 branches and 2 wooden poles. It's like, make do with what you have. So they split up into two groups. It's Beans, Ren, and their dad and the dad Steve, and then Donnie, Lewis, and the mom Eileen. And while Donnie, Lewis, and Eileen are out gathering firewood, Miles comes up to them and is like, "Hey, you guys should come to this feast to try to like win back their forgiveness." And they're like, "We should go get the others since we're all hungry." And he's like, "No, no, 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 no. You can only come in groups of 3." So they go to the feast and they eat and all of that stuff, and they fill themselves. Meanwhile, Miles goes to the other group and tells them that like, oh, the like Lewis and the rest of them are all like feasting. And when I told them about it, and like they said something along the lines of, "Oh, like more for me," and went ahead. So he's essentially just sowing discord between these two factions that have been created. Um, and that's a little fishy. But at the feast, like they consult the fire god Oprah. It's a coincidence, apparently. And the fire god Oprah blows fire, and that means that they are not forgiven, and now they are being shunned, which means nobody on the island can have any interaction with them. So they are literally on their own. So they go back to the other faction, and they're trying to be like, "Guys, we've been shunned, and now we have to work together." Blah blah blah. And the other faction, Steve is like, "What do you like? Why did you guys go and eat? Like that was messed up." And then like Steve and Eileen get into a whole thing about the fact that Steve lost his job, and therefore Eileen is now the breadwinner, and Steve feels some type of way about thinks she's implying that he can't provide for his family and all of that. So they essentially just break off, and they're just gonna each do their own thing. That's the general idea. Lo and behold, what we see is that all of this is actually being orchestrated by Miles, and they are in fact on a reality show called Family Fake Out. This whole thing, like everybody on the island is an actor. Donnie, even like one of the actors went to Donnie's high school and he remembers him, but nobody believes Donnie when he's like, "I know that guy." And we see that like everybody in their town is watching them have this miserable, horrible vacation that has very quickly devolved into Survivor. And so then just the regular sort of hijinks ensue. They're literally displayed as Angry Faction 1 and Angry Faction 2 on the screen, and we see them just like fight each other and be incapable of like surviving. There's a food drop, or like there's supposed to be a food drop. Miles tells them each that there's going to be a food drop and sends them on different paths to the food. When they get there, it's empty boxes. So now they really hate each other because they think that the others like are stealing the food from them. And it just devolves into chaos. It's Lord of the Flies. That's what's happening. This family is being ripped apart for the entertainment of the world. But we get back home and we realize that like the reason that they knew so much about the family and knew how to push all these buttons is because Lewis's best friend Twitty like told them everything about them, and he's starting to feel really bad about that. So he and Lewis's other best friend Tawny hatch a plan to like go to the island, because it turns out that they're not on an uncharted island called Mandalina. They're actually on an island called Catalano, which is 30 minutes off the coast of where they live. And the helicopter just circled around for like hours in order to trip them up and throw them off the trail.
I'm just thinking of how much jet fuel was wasted.
Such everything about this production is horrible. Horrible. But so Twitty and Tawny, like they have a friend with a boat named Tom who like really wants Lewis's affection and love, but Lewis barely tolerates him. And they all go off to save the family. And when they get there, Tawny gets hit in the head with a coconut. That can kill you, for the record. Like, let's just be that's not a joke. But she gets hit in the head with a coconut and passes out. And Twitty gets captured, and they like lock him up in the storage room, but he realizes that it's like where all of the costumes and props are. So he just dresses up and sneaks out, pretends to be an actor, and essentially starts sabotaging this reality show from within. And when Tawny's eventually found by Donnie, and she loses her memory for like half a second, and then is able to tell them like, "Oh wait, you guys are on TV." But like what Twitty has done in the meantime is he's managed to like dislodge all of the cables, so the show is no longer broadcasting, and that gives them enough time to like, with this information, they are trying, like, now the factions are essentially getting back together and they're trying to let everybody know, this is all like a horrible, horrible plan. But meanwhile, Miles has sowed some discord, particularly between Ren and Lewis, by convincing Ren that like the guy that she was kind of started to have a thing with, who is an actor who was getting ready to tell her what was really going on. He that and so they so they have to fire him because like he's about to reveal the secret, and so they have to take him away. But the way that they do it is by suggesting that Lewis told the Islanders about this one native like still going around and hanging out with her, and so that they came and took him, and essentially Lewis is to blame for all of your woe. So she now, because it's Lord of the Flies, has gone down a deep, dark path and decides to murder her brother. So when the TV cuts back on, we see Ren stalking Lewis with a spear, and she pushes him off a cliff, even though everyone tries to stop her from doing that. And Miles is freaking out because he's like, oh God, like someone actually died on the show, and everybody's worried back home, like that Ren actually killed her brother. And then we see that in fact he is not dead. This was all a ploy. In the time when the cameras are off, they did manage to catch Ren and Lewis before it got too far. Apparently, Ren had him up a tree. Which is, I'm really mad that I didn't get to physically see that. But Ren had him up a tree. They told them what was going on, and then they decided to get back at Miles by like calling up another prank show called Gotcha, and getting those cameras there to like catch them pranking back Miles, who was pranking them by destroying their family on live television. So obviously Miles will never work again. Ren and Lewis, like, they still fight, but like, they love each other apparently. And then we just see like the rest of the summer for the family, and Lewis spends time in his chair with Tawny, and Ren starts dating that actor whose real name is Jason. I think his name is like Muay Thai or something like that on the island, but it's Jason. And yeah, and we just see that, life just continues for the Stevens family. Still is wild, still is crazy, but we know that in their hearts there's love. And that is the Even Stevens movie, and the end of the Even Stevens franchise.
And with that, we'll be right back with the review. Hey guys. So, I think to get into the review, one of the things that we really like first saw in this movie was just the fact that Lewis was such a menace, and now that we're like grown adults, we realize that it's actually insane the amount, like the stuff he was doing to Rin is crazy. And even the fact that he sabotaged his sister's graduation, like truly, I don't want to call him an evil child, but God, how mischievous. If we want to use that instead.
It's very reminiscent of like Dennis the Menace and like Problem Child. You remember those movies that were like really popular in like the 90s about bad children who caused like chaos and genuine destruction? It's very reminiscent of that. And the thing that what I paid the most attention to, that I was like, it's wild that like Lewis was never disciplined. It's like he like got detention every now and then from the principal. His parents did nothing to stop him. Like Ren was actually, when you break it down, she was actually so patient and so like the fact that she hadn't murdered Lewis earlier is shocking to me.
Yeah, no, because when you actually like look at the episodes, and then even in this movie what he was doing, I was like, oh girl, like I wouldn't have blamed you if you had like hurt your little brother, because I'm sorry, but he was doing a lot.
A lot. Do you remember there's like one episode where he aren't they on like a game show? A lot of game things in the show. But like they were on like a game show and they had to like find something embarrassing of each other. And he like tapes her boyfriend like cheating on her. And is like gonna use it until he realizes that like that's going a little bit too far.
He was truly a menace, and I blame their parents for this because, like you said, he was really never properly disciplined.
Not
Um,
once.
and I think another thing that you also had picked up that we thought was actually kind of a parallel to Teen Beach Movie was the fact that he's like low key actually smart. Like he's actually
Yeah,
a really great inventor,
yeah,
but for some reason nobody has ever like told him to like go in the engineering direction, maybe robotics. I don't know.
yeah. Like
Uh,
he clearly has a lot of just. It's not even untapped potential because it is tapped. It's just tapped for the worst, like for like
for
literally the
mischief,
worst things that he can do. It's not in any way being put towards anything that's like productive or
right?
potentially like useful. It's just terrorizing his friends and family.
Truly.
And it's but like yeah, like I think we were talking about it, we were saying like at the end, like it's really funny because I think my read on it was like when they get older, like Ren and Lewis are definitely gonna be like best friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like in like 10 years, like once he gets out of this phase, they're gonna be best friends. But he's also going to be that brother that like gets into Caltech and flunks out
Yeah.
and like lives on her couch for the rest of his life and is like beloved by the family, like everybody except her like partner, you know what I mean, like the kids love him, her like his mom like still cooks his meals. But is like literally wasting potential at all times. um
Yes, no, that's literally Lewis. Like and unless he literally something would have to happen in high school for him where somebody literally intervenes and is like, please redirect your powers for good. For him to not go down that path. But that's what I would predict is like he would literally go to Caltech or MIT, get into Caltech or MIT because he's like smart and exceptionally so when it comes to like creating things and then just like wouldn't care
yeah,
enough to bother like graduating. Like he'd be
yeah,
like, eh, I did this for 2 years. I'm good.
yeah, it just wouldn't happen. Or he would like break the school, you know what I mean, and they would be like, you have to go, like you can't stay. um but yeah, it's just a very I also like, I'm not sure, like, isn't she a senator? Like,
Yes.
how can
Their
you have a
mother is a
like?
senator.
I just don't understand, like, because there's literally an episode about the fact that Lewis is a liability. That like Shorty
There
Short
is.
Pants
No, I
episode.
completely remember that. I remember that.
You know what I mean? Like he's an actual problem, and they do nothing about it. Like absolutely nothing. Like today, the boy would be in therapy and probably heavily medicated. I think that would be the trajectory that
It
he would
is
be.
actually true. He would not be allowed to run wild the way that he was
You
in the
know what
year
I mean?
2000. Like I
Literally just an agent of chaos. It's so funny. Like, it's a problem, but I
it's
also
also
deeply
one
understand why, as a child, I loved that show, and I loved Lewis
it's
because it
also
was
unfortunate because I know if they had like cut that off before he was like age 9, like if they had like redirected it, he probably could have been a very good child.
exactly.
But it's like nobody ever properly disciplined him, and by that I don't mean like corporal punishment or spanking. I just mean literally telling him you can't do that. Like he needs somebody to. He
Can't.
needed somebody for him. He needs somebody who is like hard boundaries. You know,
Exactly, or just like there are consequences for your actions. Like like you will
you
like
can't
lose
survive as
things.
a person like
People will be upset with you. The only person that's ever upset with him is Red, and all it makes him do is want to hurt her more, and no one seems to find issue with that. They just let it continue. Um, and she's very right when she's like, "Guys, Lewis is the source of all of our problems." She is correct.
exactly.
So there's that. Like, I've never like rewatching this. I felt for Red so much more. Like, what? Why did you pull the lever? Why did you pull the lever, Lewis? Why couldn't you like? You couldn't just eat the snacks in the room. Like you had to go find a throne and pull the lever. So it's quite funny. It's quite funny.
It is. And then I know one other thing that we were really talking about was how this is um a great either like a show or just a great way of showing like how young reality TV was at this point in time. Um and just like the focus on reality TV in this particular in the movie that's just the way they chose to like play out the movie. And how like that this era of like 2003, I would say, into like 2005, like reality TV was really booming, and then it really kicked off around 2007 because of the writers strike. Fun fact, if you didn't know that, I can't remember where I learned that at. I think it was a reality TV documentary, but like the reason we got so much reality TV around 2006, 2007, 2008 was because of the writers strike. People
Yeah,
couldn't do scripted shows.
yeah,
So that's why you started seeing like all these Real Housewives and like all of these like, Shot at Love and like all that kind of stuff. More of them started like popping up because of that. So we really start to see like the early parts of reality TV and how anything really went in those early days. Because we both kept talking about how this would literally never fly now. Like you could not have a family go through all this stuff, sign a release under false pretenses, and basically are in danger. Or,
like they are
or
literally
think
in
they're in
danger.
danger. Like I really don't you like I think the closest thing we have now is Naked and Afraid. I want to say is like still on,
It is
but
still. I
they
don't
all
know
know
why,
they're
but
going on to that before they go on to it.
yeah.
So
Um,
it's
but
very
that being
different.
said, though, it was like because I think the comparison that I made. I mean, and here's the problem: you're watching it and you're like my thought. I was like, Family Fake Out would be wildly entertaining. Like
It would be. No, it would be
I
great.
would watch that show, but it would be hard. Like, but it's a thing of like, but the question is like, but isn't reality TV like is reality TV horrible? You know what I mean? Like the
Mm-hmm.
things that we like put people through for entertainment. Because I think like the big comparison that I made when watching, I was like, I would love this show the way that I used to love Wife Swap. And
Mm-hmm.
like my favorite thing, like when I was home from school, like Lifetime used to play Wife Swap in the middle of the day for like hours, and I would watch it for hours. And like I think back on it and I'm like, that show, the entire premise of that show is is that someone decides your family is strange and they go and get somebody else to come and judge you
Mm-hmm.
and then make you live a way that you don't want to live for a week. And then at the end, y'all get together and tell each other about all the ways that your family is horrible and you're ruining your children. Like
Right.
it is such like that is psychological torture. It is not okay to do that. But like that show went on for years and it did really well.
It might still be on.
I
Like
think I know that they do like a celebrity Wife Swap
they
now.
do. I used to really like that
I
too.
saw Cisco on it and I was like,
Yes.
this
Yes, he
is
was on there.
what's going on. Um, he like regulated what his wife ate. I was like, this is a deep dive. Um, but but like yeah, it's just it's just opening up those questions. I think that just generally speaking, the turn of the century and sort of like the great digital technological revolution of maybe the way in which like by being so connected to each other, we have somehow come to care for each other less. Um, and I think that that ends up being sort of like the big critique of reality television at its core. That's the big critique of it is that like we are either willing to put ourselves through or allow others to put people through real people with real lives and real emotions, not characters made up through like often very stressful, traumatic, um, inciting situations purely to entertain and to capitalize off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like to what level? have we lost our like, or not even lost, but just like this is just an example of like a lack of general care that we seem to have for each other. And you see it in other places too, you know, like with things about, you know, tech companies and privacy and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my question that I'm posing for the day.
Yeah, no, I think it's also interesting because something else they get into in here that the principal says while he's watching, by the way, is he was like, "Oh, I hate this." You know, like this is disgusting. It
Like
continues
eating chips.
he continues watching it, by the way, but I do think that they tapped into something that I think at this point in 2003 wasn't as much of a thing yet, but the idea of like like hate watchers, and
Yeah,
especially for reality TV, a lot of people feel like that because if you think about why a lot of people watch reality TV, especially the more the ones that are supposed to be you know, like being about a certain lifestyle that's above your average lifestyle, you know, a lot of people do watch those shows because they want to feel better than other people.
yeah,
And like that's the main reason. And they just want to feel like, oh well, I would never do that, so I'm therefore better than them, so this makes me feel validated that I'm better than someone else. um and you it's a little bit different on game shows like Family Fake Out, of course, but you do, you know, I feel like that's why a lot of people do watch reality TV in general because they're like, I would never go on a show like this, you know, like y'all could
never.
never catch me on, you know, whatever random reality game show that's on. Because I'm better than that. So it reality TV gets into a very interesting psychological thing because of that. You know, it's just like, why are you watching it, and then kind of what are we saying by watching it or by upholding it, and then expecting more and more out of people, as you were saying, and especially on those shows that are a bit more narratively driven reality TV, like a
Yeah,
Housewives, or you know, one of those shows that's like following a group of people for a long time, a Real World, etc. So I do think it is very interesting. And you know, I feel like now we're in such a completely different place because reality has really taken over as like it's own beast along with scripted now. So yeah, it was very interesting to see like the 2003 take on kind of what that would be,
yeah.
um, you know, versus now. Like I don't ever think Disney would now do a movie about like a reality TV a family on reality TV, you know?
I mean, maybe because I mean, it's I don't know because what's interesting I think too about this is that like this is clearly also a commentary. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like it's clearly you're not supposed to walk away from this and think that this. I mean, this isn't what happened to me, right? But I think in theory they might be trying to like communicate to that 10-year-old kid like, all right, maybe reconsider the fact that you come home every day at 3:30 and watch Fear Factor.
Yeah, good
Like
times.
maybe you know, think about that for a second. You're not going to because you're 10, but like I think that's like where the intent lives,
Yeah.
because there is even that great line that Miles actually says like, oh, look, when he's doing the commentary
Right.
like to like to the audience watching, and he's like, isn't life funny when it's not happening to you? And like he said, and I think I fell out, Chelsea. I'm pretty sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I fell out on that couch. Like I laughed very hard when he said that.
Because it's true. It's
Because
true.
it's deeply true, and it's also like that is that is the great commentary. It's like we, and you know, this goes way back. You know, this goes back to like gladiators and, you know, beast fights in the Colosseum. But we as human beings, like we really enjoy the misery of others.
Oh yeah. It's what is the German word? Schadenfreude, I think. Is what
uh
Schadenfreude, and it means like you enjoy when people something goes wrong for someone else. We don't have a word for it in English, so like people just use the German one. But that's literally what it means. Is it's like you are happy at somebody else's like demise or like
and it's toe up. Like
it is.
toe up. It's not okay. But it's also like it's something that's so like I definitely participate in that. I wish I didn't. I try not to, but there are moments where I don't catch it, and then I realize that I'm laughing at someone's pain and I need to step back and reevaluate. But it's very easy to do. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
just, I guess the question is more like it lives in the place of, like, should we be exploiting that, or should we be
Hmm.
trying to be better? But like, I love the Real Housewives of Potomac. It's the only one I watch, but
I
it's so
know. I
entertaining to me.
remember when your friend made you watch it and you were like, "Yeah, I get it." Then you tried.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I
Because
could
guys,
do
I
this
watched
one.
just to make clear to the audience, I watched all of them except for I tuned in and out on Dallas, but every other one I pretty much watched. I've watched every single episode. Um
And what was the Netflix one that just came out that was like,
Bling Empire, because that one was so good. Oh my god.
no, no, no. Bling Empire is the one in China? Is it China?
No, it's in LA, but it's with a bunch of Asian Americans. It was about a bunch of really, really rich Asian Americans.
Oh, okay. I feel like I watched like there was something about like an emperor's kid,
That
or
might have
maybe
been
that.
Bling Empire. They did
Okay,
have one of the
I don't
guys
know.
who's cute Confucius's great great grandson or something.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. I don't. I was watching the promo. I got very, but it's on my list of things to watch. So I was like, all right, I'll
You
do
will
this. And like,
probably it's insane.
I
Obviously.
watched the what was it? Is it the one about the women in India? I enjoyed that one quite a bit.
Um it was a reality show?
Yeah,
Oh, Bollywood Wives. Yeah, we talked about
Bollywood.
that.
Yeah,
We talked
Bollywood
about
wise, I was like, this is excellent. I enjoyed this. But not that. I'm thinking of the one with the people that like got married.
Oh, Love is Blind. Yeah, you did watch. I remember we would text about that. Love is Blind.
Is
That's
that
what
what's
you
called Love
watched.
Is Blind? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what you watched.
and that was also a whole, like, so it is catchy. You know what I mean? And like I used to love like Flavor of Love,
Oh
and like
gosh.
I
Great
definitely
times.
watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians for like the first like 2 or 3 years it was on.
Oh
I used
yeah.
to watch Living with the Lohans. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
Which was that's a deep dive. That's a whole. I
That
would love to
is
do a whole podcast on just that show because oh my
Living with the Lohans. Oh
god,
God. Or
living with
Living Lohan. It was called Living Lohan.
oh, was Living Lohan, whatever.
I think it was Living Lohan. But yeah, no, gosh. Early
um,
reality TV was like it's just because there were no rules. So
yeah,
I feel like everybody was just kind of getting a show and just like doing whatever they needed to stay on the air.
yeah. The most like reasonable one that I remember was Run's House. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I used to watch Friend's House. Friend's House was good. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
I
very
watched
like
Run's House.
I
Yeah,
would
it
literally
was
call
like
it Christian
I was
Christian
gonna say it's
reality
like
TV.
wholesome. It's the most wholesome reality TV I can think of, besides like PBS. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like
right.
it's just um, but yeah, like it's I don't know, like but like we enjoy it quite a bit clearly. And it I don't know. I'm just curious. Like in 300 years when America is no more or definitely not what it is now, like.
When the
Because
empire has fallen.
let me just let y'all know that's coming. Like this is
When
not
the
gonna last.
empire. Yes.
I would argue we are living in the last days of it, so y'all better just enjoy it while you can. But
Long live your hedonism.
but like I just what like I'm curious, like are they gonna look back on like this moment the way that we look back on like all of the like the feasts in Rome? You know what I mean? Are they gonna look back on it and be like, y'all didn't realize something was up when you got pleasure from watching people flip tables over in restaurants? Like you didn't think something was wrong or
Like,
spit
nope,
on
didn't ring
people?
any
Like
alarm
you didn't
bells.
you didn't think that something needed to drastically change? Um so I don't know, but like again, I'm still gonna watch the next season of Love Is Blind when it comes out. Like I'm gonna do
Oh
that.
my gosh, yeah.
Um
Yeah, that's what's tricky is it's like, I think you also, something else to put into that conversation is also the idea of like the diversity, and reality TV is sadly a lot more diverse than scripted.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also another big thing, and especially at the time when a lot of those reality shows started, if you were Black, Asian, Latino, that was for a lot of people the only time you really saw yourself was on Friend's
Yeah.
House, Flavor of Love, like
Yeah.
even all the Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's one reason that it was so big when it came out. I mean, it was also super funny, but it was also one of those things where it was like, well,
Yeah.
you don't
The
have an
early days.
all Black female cast of 40, 50 somethings
Yeah.
on scripted. Like that just doesn't, it does not exist. So, and who are all doing well, quote unquote, well, you know? So
Yeah.
it's that's another part of it that I think often gets left out of the reality conversation. I just kind of wanted to bring up because that is a big thing where it's like that's you were not seeing it, so it was only being seen on reality. So I think that's why so many, especially like marginalized groups, kind of glom onto it, and I'll say especially Black women because it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm seeing myself.
No, that's very real, and like a great point that I'm glad that you brought up, because I also do think that like, and I'm going to speak about it like from the specific lens of blackness and like my blackness, just because that is the one that I feel most comfortable talking with any sort of authority on in this particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
But like I do recognize that it can expand outward, and like in the same way that like there's a lot of positive imagery that can be received from reality, the diversity of reality television. There's also a lot of negative portrayals, or categorizations that can happen. So I'm not like ignoring that side of it at all, but I will offer the like thought or opinion that the surge of black excellence, or the surge of the aspiration towards a version of black excellence, right? And affluence, and sort of, having real wealth and things of that nature. I think that having show like being able to see not just fictional characters, but like real black people living those affluent lives, like for our generation who grew up watching these things, it it blew the roof off of the ceiling for us. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it gave us a chance to see like, like like even like I distinctly remember like a Run's House episode where like Diggy and Russell, like the little one, Russell Jr.'s,
Yeah, Russie.
like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Russie, like where like they're like they're fighting because like Russie keeps taking Diggy's clothes. And Diggy is like super, like he's with it, like he's mad fashionable and all this stuff. And I like remember as a kid like having a response to that of something along the lines of like, oh, like I could be really into fashion if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can find a way to do that on a budget, but I also like kind of want to ball one day. And it just and like I can do that. Like it didn't, and I was going to a school with like a bunch of very very wealthy white children.
Right.
And it was like, oh, like this isn't just something that the white people living in the city have in New York. Like this is something that apparently there is a very wealthy black family in New Jersey chilling. Like and I go to see my cousin there all the time. Like this is closer than I think. It's not that far away. Um and I think that we can see the real effects of that in the way that like our generation and the generation below us, at least in with those that identify as black, like the way that they position themselves in the world, and have a sense of entitlement that I don't think necessarily black generations before us had.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think that you could really make an argument for like the correlation of that representation and getting to see people, not made up, real people that look like you doing these things, and that just blows it off your head. Like, all right, yeah, like I can do that. That can happen.
Yeah. No, no, I actually think that's a really good correlation to make. And honestly, that's probably true. I think even with I know as of late, especially on like social media, specifically Twitter, I've seen like there's been a bigger movement to kind of, leave behind, and Black women have been saying this for years, but they really want, a lot of younger women want to really leave behind the whole strong Black woman trope, because they're like, you're
Mm-hmm.
basically, you're flattening us. You're not
Yeah.
letting us be full humans. So I've been seeing a counter movement, which, if you get into the capitalism of it, is a little bit iffy, but I get what they want out of it, is just like this whole thing about like, I only want to see Black women in luxury. And so that's like a really big thing on social media right now, where it's literally just like Black women wearing, haute couture, like designers, and like, in these beautiful houses, and like everybody's taking photos of it and showcasing that on all the social media platforms like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I do think it is something that was, as you said, kind of born, because it's mostly people in our generation, like millennials, young Gen Xers. So the people who really were impacted by these shows.
Yeah.
So I really do think you could definitely make a correlation that that kind of opened up a ceiling that was, or a window into something that people just were not really aware of, because it wasn't on TV. You only would maybe read about it, but that was about it. You didn't really know who's in the Martha's Vineyard set, what are they wearing, like.
Yeah.
And now social media also has democratized that even further. So it's like it started with the reality TV, and now it's kind of coupled with social media, where now those kids that are in these different sets, or these adults, they're also on social media being like, here's what I'm wearing today to Martha's, or like, here's what I'm wearing today
Mm-hmm.
to Cipriani, like, so you just
Yeah.
know all this kind of stuff um that wasn't previously divulged. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is definitely very interesting. The relationship between reality TV and luxury, and like affluence especially, I think hasn't, because we're still in it, I don't think it's been properly like researched yet. But it definitely, it is something that I think you're absolutely spot on about that correlation.
Yeah. And it so like it and it just it's always all of these things, like
Mm-hmm.
especially like media and entertainment. And I think that we're seeing it the more and more that we just do this podcast, and like the farther that we go into just thinking about the just literal impact that these images that we watch have on us, and how like they're they are so deeply complicated, like the worst movie can actually have like incredible lessons in it.
Mm-hmm.
um but then those lessons can be muddy, like a question about what like what is reality TV, and do its pros outweigh its cons,
Mm-hmm.
or like do its pros for certain communities outweigh its cons. Like it's just a and I think if you want, you can take that argument, that discussion, and just bring it to Hollywood generally as a global phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was started in this place, that in this country that is deeply complicated um in its histories. And I think the jury is very much still out on like whether or not is a fundamental like good or bad force in the world,
Right.
historically and presently, and in the future. um and it's Hollywood is probably America's greatest export outside of like obesity, and outside of like not real food, like Hollywood is probably America's
No,
greatest export.
it is 100%.
and and like and we can see, like we see in it, like we see the complex, deeply kind of fucked up issues of America just like splayed all over these screens, and then sent out to the world for like the rest of the world to consume, literally, and then like respond to. And
Right.
it's a very like I don't know if it's good or bad, but it is also where I've chosen to like make my home. So who, like, it's also like, who am I to say anything?
Right. No, It is complicated, and it's always hard when you're living in the middle of something to then be able to objectively have a definitive like opinion on it. You know, like
Yeah.
I feel the same way about social media. Like I'm like I couldn't tell you whether social media is good or bad at this point in time because I'm like we're literally in the middle of it. Talk to me in 20 years and I'm sure somebody will probably be like, "Yeah, y'all were wrecking yourselves." And I'll be like, "Well, you're
Yeah, we're
probably right." But like I couldn't tell you that in the middle of it.
because it was that, and I don't know. Maybe that's the problem with like the Stevens family. You know, like they're living with Lewis, so they can't. They're just like, this is just who he is. Like this is just who he is. We don't want to.
He's
Yeah, we don't want to
legitimately just
stifle
a
him.
menace.
Like we don't want to stifle him, and everybody on the outside is like, yeah, but he's destroying you from the inside. Like you, like that's what's happening.
He's an agent of chaos, truly.
And maybe that's like that. Maybe that is like maybe like this movie like got it like right on the nose. Like maybe that is what like we're destroying ourselves from the inside. Like that's all it is. Like we're all just sort of in a constant state of destroying ourselves from the inside. And like it's just about whether or not you're gonna exploit that for personal gain. And at least like I was looking through a bunch of quotes today, and like I saw something that like an ex once said to me, and I wrote it down where he was just like, "Life's not a happy thing." And I wrote it down because I guess it just like it felt so true when he said it. So it becomes a thing of like, we're none of us are really happy. So like, I'm gonna just get what I can while I can. Like, I'm gonna be miserable, or like, we're all not happy. So it's okay if I like showcase your misery in order for me to like make a buck and be able to, I don't know, buy some ho-hos, and have a little bit of pleasure for a second. Or get the pleasure of like at least my misery isn't that kind of misery.
Right. Yeah. That's why it's complicated. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Lewis is a character.
It's incredible.
Truly incredible.
And Ren is the real hero of the series.
She is.
Because
no,
she never murdered him. She never really murdered him, and the strength that God gave that girl.
Powerful.
Right?
And I think something else that we had discussed from this movie that we both liked was also like the fact that it ends in a music video.
Yeah.
Which is wild. Like literally just like even if you don't watch it, just like think about that. That's crazy.
Like it doesn't make any sense. There's no like connective tissue.
There's also no music elsewhere in it that like they're not like singing throughout, so it just comes out of nowhere.
But it is weirdly enough like a perfect example. Also, this whole thing takes place over 3 days.
Yeah.
Like this family, it's not like the fact that it was this easy to rip this family apart is a big red flag. They should probably do some family therapy. Cause like it was 3 days and they're ratty, like the clothes are so ripped. I'm like, that doesn't I just don't how bad could it have gotten? It's only been 3 days. But yeah, it's a great like this movie is a great like representation of what the show was like.
Right.
Like because it was literally just chaotic energy all the time. And like when we got to the end and saw the music video, we were literally just like, what? Why? For what purpose? Like I'm here for it, and it's actually fairly like after you go through all of that with this family, you're like, you know what? Yeah, I want to watch this music video. Let's like, great. Let's dance around and just sing a little bit. Go ahead with your voice, Christy Carlson Romano. Like, do your thing. But it really there's no reason for it to exist. But I think that that's what made the show so successful is that it was a show built on that chaotic energy and therefore was probably like a way of children being like now that I think about it, I have to show my godson Even Stevens. He's gonna lose his mind. Like he's gonna love it so much. And maybe he'll behave a little bit better because he'll watch. So like he'll get to really it'll be cathartic. He'll get to get some of his like chaotic energy out, or he could learn a lot from Lewis.
Right.
I have to think through this decision. But the point being that like becomes a space where it's like kids can watch it and like Lewis does all the crazy and they maybe don't have to do as much crazy. You know what I mean? Like it sort of takes that chaos out of them. Which is probably why it was so like well received and beloved in the whole situation, I would think.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree. And so I guess, with that, would you show this one to the bibs?
Well, I am literally planning to show it to my godson. I'm like, oh my goodness! Like next time I see him, we're gonna do an Even Stevens marathon, and he's going to love it. He might also begin to torture his sister, but I just, like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Um, I think I would like. It's the type of show that like I would like. It's the type of show that I would watch with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they had it on, like I would probably like stop what I'm doing, like watch it for like 10-15 minutes because it is that like it's so fun because it is just a world of chaos. And but I think at the same time there is still heart at the core of it. Like we do see there are moments where Lewis knows he goes too far, and like there are genuine moments of like family. Just I can't think of the best word right now, but the family coming together, and like leaning on each other, and I think that there's good lessons in that for kids
Mm-hmm.
about like because like I come like my extended family is chaotic and like a little crazy and like growing up like I always knew that like we're loud and we're this and we're a bunch of things and like we fight like there are real fights that go down in the family and there are real offenses that occur and people hurt each other and it's messy and it's all those things and I don't think that my family is unique in that. I think many families are like that, but I always knew at the end of the day that there was deep 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 love there and that I could count on them for anything at the end of the day. And I think that like the Stevens family does a sort of good job of like showcasing that. Like this is a family that is chaotic and they fight and like it's messy, but like his sister would never actually kill him. She'd chase him up a tree,
Mm-hmm.
but she'd never actually kill him. And like when it comes down to it, when there's a threat coming at the family, or when there's a threat coming at anyone in the family, like the family's gonna hold you down. And like I know I'm a bit of a wild and chaotic person myself. So I imagine that the family I create when they might be a little wild and chaotic, and I think I would like for my kids to know like this could be a nice like reflection for them to see like yeah like we're all crazy but like we love each other. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I would also show this one to my kids and also ditto on showing the show because, gosh, I just had so many positive memories about it when I was growing up. So I'm like, of course, that would be on the list. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's fun. It's a fun movie. It actually holds up pretty well. I would definitely recommend you rewatch it if you guys haven't seen it in a couple of years, like we didn't. Because it's actually still pretty funny.
So pretty funny.
Yeah, and it's a good way to familiarize yourself with the characters again. And yeah, I think kids love it so much because it was, like you said, this like completely chaotic everything. And you kind of have these like archetypes that we always see, but it's just they do them in like a new and a fresh way. Like you have the super smart sister, the elder brother who's a jock, and then you have the little mischievous brother who always gets looked over essentially. Um, but they like expanded on that and didn't just make them flat. And so I would definitely agree. I would definitely like show this one because yeah, it's just fun, and I feel like kids more would probably immediately relate to it maybe than back then because reality TV is so much more of a thing. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like they would like catch that and be like, oh, in a way that maybe we weren't processing it when we were that age.
Yeah, that's very real.
So yeah, I think with that, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date. as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.